Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. We've got another video for you today, and we have some important artifact update news. So right now in test server, they've made some changes to Amulet of Rao and Bob Comlink. They've made it Bob Comlink a supercharge generator. It applies as a PI. Amulet of Rao has got a damage-based component to it. Bob Comlink has a damage-based component to it. So I'll be covering that in a video tomorrow. They've also added Blue Beetle, if you've seen another video on it, but they're changing that so often now with its passives that I'm just going to wait until they actually have an idea of what it's supposed to look like finalized before I bring you that video review. But most importantly, I wanted to touch on the update to artifact swapping. So it's almost at this point, it's like beating dead horse. I know on this channel, I've covered it multiple videos. Everyone's got an opinion on it. It's a controversial topic. There's always, like, every single week, there's a thread on the forums about it. But at least I want to bring you an update from what Mepps had provided. So let's kind of look into that here. So back in March, Mepps had said, "We have no plans to adjust or limit artifact swapping. We didn't expect this behavior, but swapping out your equipment is just something you have always been able to do. Like anything else, though, if it becomes a big problem, that might get revisited." So then this was posted yesterday to the DCU team. Same thing, like I said, there's always threads about this. And then Mepps provided a new update. So this comment from March is still accurate. "We are certainly aware of the many discussions on it, the impact on the game, and how folks choose to play. It certainly has the potential to become a problem, but we're working more on each artifact directly at the moment to ideally avoid any sort of larger action. To be clear as possible, it was always intended for you to be able to change your artifacts like any other piece of equipment, and it was never intended for you to be able to have the benefits of an artifact you don't currently have equipped. I'll touch on that in a moment. Again, like any other piece of equipment. Obviously, the way artifact abilities and effects work, these two things intermix in ways that at times are interesting, annoying, and or unbalancing, and that's why the topic is controversial." So let's kind of touch on that first, because I mean, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, well, Obsidian Chill is going to turn this into a 15-20 minute rant video about artifact swapping, and it's going to ultimately go nowhere." So no, that's not the purpose of this video. It's basically just to kind of give you my impression of what this comment actually means and what they're actually going to do to correct it. So right now, it's a given fact that artifact swapping was always intended. You can always switch out your equipment. I know some people have said, like, well, they should lock your inventory so you can only access the 3 artifacts. I mean, that's not going to solve anything. We have like over 40 artifacts right now. So if you lock the 3, then that makes 95% of artifacts useless. So they're not going to do that, because that would be just a giant nightmare in terms of having to refund it. Because that's the thing. Anytime an artifact adjustment thread comes up, or they plan to do something, there's always that crowd that says, "Oh, I paid for this artifact. You aren't allowed to change it," or "How dare you change it because I paid for it," or "I want a full refund." That's happened with Venomous Dispenser. That happened with EOG. They always give essentially cave, even though they can do whatever the hell they want. They just cave and give the people what they want in terms of essentially free artifact upgrade. So that's pretty much a precedent now. So any kind of major change they make to artifacts, they're always going to have to do that because they've done it in the past. So I don't think they're gonna drop their foot or make a hardline stance on that going forward. So touching on the point here where people are going to kind of gravitate to, where it says it was never intended to have the benefits of an artifact you don't have currently equipped. Again, like any other piece of equipment. So right away, that's not a factual statement. So if you pop a stat buff trinket, like you pop your DPS trinket, get your extra prec and might. If you swap that off, do your stats disappear for the 12 seconds? No. If you pop your stat buff trinket, you get the stats for 12 seconds, whether or not the trinket is equipped or not. If you pop a henchman or a pet, and the pet summoned, if you take off that pet trinket, does the pet disappear? Do the henchmen disappear? No, they don't. So I'm not trying to defend artifacts like that. You can have all these buffs stack after the fact. I'm not trying to defend that. I'm just saying that that's a programming issue or coding issue on their side, and it's always worked like that. So any type of buff that you have a part of an equipment, you can swap off and still have. So there are, like, say for example, if a head mod, if you get same thing that always happens at the beginning. So if you have a head mod that grants you supercharge regen, if you pop the supercharge, you get the regen, then you can swap off the head because the effect's already happened. But for any kind of effects that still last, you still get it even though if it's equipped or not. So that's more, I would say, like a miscommunication, but it doesn't mean that it's right. So a lot of people are going to bring up like that, like when I restart my guide series and show off the Dead King on single target. So swapping off Dead King and being able to reset the internal cooldown and always get that orbital assistance proc. I mean, yeah, that's unbalanced. I mean, it wasn't intended. I mean, everything was intended because that's how it was programmed. It was just basically now it's becoming an issue because they've have so more artifacts and all the synergy between them since Batuba designed them. So that's why, should it be fixed? 100%. Like the Dead King should be fixed so that you can't keep swapping off for the orbital assistance proc. I mean, there should be a way to not have to use your, I mean, you still have to swap an artifact off because for E-Bomb and Amulet, there's no reason why, finishers on Might are the highest single target damage out of all those Might abilities. So we shouldn't be, penalized for using a finisher while we want to keep our E-Bomb and Amulet stacks. So there has to be a way to swap that off to something, even if you're not swapping in an artifact for extra damage like Dead King. I want to be able to use a finisher without removing my stacks because I don't necessarily need to remove my stacks. Like there's no reason why I should restart my damage and be penalized like that. So that's something that needs to be adjusted. I mean, this whole like troll swapping like 15 artifacts, I mean, that needs to be adjusted as well. I mean, you could easily combine like Tetra and Cog into one artifact. I mean, you could have different effects like Claw, everything else. So that's something that needs to be adjusted for a balancing issue. But what I feel that they should do is just give us a better option to swap artifacts. I know it impacts the viewer experience. I know no one wants to be in their inventory every few seconds, especially with like the whole Dead King thing, or like from like a troller point of view. Like you shouldn't have to be in your inventory every few seconds. That just ruins your content experience, ruins the viewer experience. So that is something that definitely needs to be adjusted. And I think they do have some options available to us that could. Not right now because they'd have to fix it the programming side. But for example, say they allowed us to swap armories mid-combat. Because right now you can't swap because you've got A, the cooldown, and B, there's that bug sometimes where you swap armories and you lose health. Obviously, if you did that in combat, you could die. But if there was no cooldown on armory swapping, you could just keep swapping armories. So it's okay. Now I need a single target. Now I need AOE. Now I need this finisher armory. Now I need this artifact EUG armory. Like you can keep swapping between all your armories to be able to access those other artifacts. So that's certainly an option. They'd have to kind of smooth that out so there wasn't like kind of a lag or delay. And obviously we would need access to more than 4 armories. So if we had access to like 8-10 armories, then we could set all the artifact combinations we wanted and play that out. So that's always an option. When they introduce that emote wheel, so if we could pull up a menu like the emote wheel and then select artifacts quickly from there, either the artifacts themselves or the armories. So you could say, okay, EOG armory, now I'm going to do like a buff armory, power armory, strategist armory, whatever, pet armory, and keep swapping like that. So there are certainly options available to us going forward that they have that they could take instead of just removing artifact swapping altogether, because they're not going to do that. Artifacts is still their primary revenue generator. Allies are certainly eventually going to exceed that, especially when they're cranking out these allies every single month. But right now, artifacts is still the number one moneymaker, I would say by far. That's because the player base nowadays isn't spamming replays as much. I mean, power tokens, all the rest of the marketplace stuff is not that expensive. So it really comes down to artifacts, allies, booster bundles, time capsules, and I guess you could say emotes now, or like marketplace cosmetics. But I would say with how many seals you have to get, all the artifact XP, how many artifacts you need that are part of meta, that's still going to be the number one revenue generator, and they're not going to just quickly adjust that to basically just eliminate that source of revenue. So I just want to bring you that update. I know we've talked about it here a lot on this channel. I know a lot of people have opinions on it, but I just want to kind of bring you what Mepps is and what the kind of their direction seems like they seem to be taking. I would say that they're not going to adjust it. They're going to look at each artifact directly, okay, what's the issue with Cog or what's the issue with Dead King, and then fix them individually rather than doing like a sweeping wave across everything. But you can certainly leave your comments in the description. In the comment section. We can kind of continue on the conversation there. So we'll see you in the next video, which is going to be talking about the artifact changes on test, and then hopefully the Blue Beetle ally, as well as some other videos as well. Take care, guys.